He was a respected Hawaii doctor. She was his wife on a scenic cliffside hike. But when jealousy turned into a violent attack, the paradise facade shattered. Now a judge has decided his fate, and the verdict will leave you speechless. This is the story of love, rage, and a fall from grace you won't believe.
You know, when we think about the anatomy of a disaster, I feel like we usually look for this singular, explosive event.
Right, like a match dropped in a powder keg or something.
Exactly. But, well, what if the disaster isn't the match? What if the real disaster is the months spent slowly, just sort of silently filling the room with gas?
I mean, that is a much more terrifying scenario.
Yeah.
Because the person standing in that room usually has no idea they're suffocating.
Right.
At least not until the spark finally hits.
And that is exactly the dynamic we're exploring in today's deep dive. So picture this. It is a breathtaking spring day on the island of Oahu in Hawaii.
Oh, gorgeous.
Right. And we're high up on the Pali Puka Trail. So it's this steep, incredibly scenic ridge. Think sheer drops, stunning views of the Pacific Ocean.
The kind of place you go for a major life event.
Yeah, exactly. And you have this highly successful couple out on a hike, and they're celebrating a 36th birthday. He's a respected anesthesiologist, Dr. Gerhardt Konig, and she is a brilliant nuclear engineer, Arielle Konig.
So on paper, I mean, it's the absolute picture of a thriving, romantic partnership.
Completely.
They're the kind of couple that just looks flawless on a social media feed, you know? Two highly educated professionals at the absolute peak of their careers.
But then, and this is where it gets dark, you completely shatter that frame. Because the reality of what happened on that mountain is, well, it's the stuff of absolute nightmares.
It really is.
Imagine you're just another hiker on that trail. You're enjoying the sunshine, and suddenly you are faced with a bloodied woman stumbling down the rocky path.
Just out of nowhere.
Yeah, out of nowhere. She's being aided by strangers, she's screaming for help, and her skull is lacerated all the way down to the bone.
Ugh, down to the bone. It's incredibly violent.
And she's telling everyone on the trail that her husband just tried to throw her off a cliff.
It's just a jarring contrast. I mean, you go from this curated birthday celebration to a desperate, primal fight for survival in literally a matter of moments.
So we have to figure out how we got from point A to point B. In this deep dive, we aren't just going to look at that physical altercation.
Right, because that's just the end result.
Exactly. We are going to explore the psychological powder keg that actually led them to that cliffside. We've pulled together this massive stack of sources.
Trial transcripts, media coverage, lots of expert legal analysis from the trial of Dr. Gerhardt Konig.
Yeah, and we're going to focus really intensely on the evidence regarding Arielle Konig's emotional affair. Plus, the elaborate ways she concealed it and how the jury ultimately weighed the impact of that betrayal on Gerhardt's mental state.
Which is really the crux of the entire trial, honestly. The legal system had to grapple with this intersection of modern digital infidelity and a horrific act of physical violence.
Yeah, they had to ask, like, how much weight does an invisible betrayal carry in a court of law?
It's a huge question.
It is. And for you listening right now, while this is undeniably a true crime story, at its core, it's really a fundamental study in human psychology. It asks you to consider how digital secrets, emotional infidelity, and that slow, deliberate erosion of trust can push a human mind to its absolute breaking point.
Because we all carry these devices in our pockets, right?
Right. We all have the capacity to compartmentalize. So, before we step onto the edge of that physical cliff in Hawaii, I think we need to define what this emotional affair actually looked like.
Yeah, let's unpack that, because the sheer volume of the communication is where the trial really focused its early days.
Okay, tell me about that.
So Arielle Konig, the nuclear engineer, was engaged in a very deep, entirely non-physical relationship with a coworker. He was referred to in court as Mr. Miller.
Okay, non-physical, but deep.
Extremely deep. They weren't just exchanging pleasantries by the water cooler. During the trial, evidence showed they exchanged hundreds of messages.
Hundreds? Wow.
Yeah, sometimes chatting back and forth all day long about deeply personal issues that had absolutely nothing to do with their professional lives.
But, I mean, just chatting with a coworker isn't a crime, right? What turns this from a workplace friendship into a psychological weapon is the concealment.
Yes, the active concealment.
She was calculatingly hiding this relationship from her husband. Think about the logistics for a second. They worked together. They had official company-monitored channels, Microsoft Teams, official emails, work cell phones.
All the standard corporate stuff.
Right. But she bypassed all of those in favor of WhatsApp, And she wasn't just using it. She was actively and continuously deleting those messages from her phone so Gerhardt wouldn't find them.
And if we look at the psychology of that digital compartmentalization, I mean, that deliberate choice of platform speaks volumes about intent.
Because you don't hide something unless you know you shouldn't be doing it.
Exactly. If
Yeah.
it is just friendly coworker banter, you leave it on Microsoft Teams.
Right.
Moving the conversation to a third-party encrypted app and then combining that with the routine daily deletion of messages, that shows an acute awareness that the nature of these conversations is a violation. She is actively building a wall.
It's like she was building a psychological bunker right inside her phone.
A bunker. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Like a reinforced room where reality doesn't apply and her husband just isn't allowed to exist. And that actually brings me to the detail from the trial that I cannot get over.
The code word.
The code word. So she is a nuclear engineer, right? And she used the acronym HALEU to secretly signal Mr. Miller. HALEU.
Which stands for high assay low enriched uranium.
Yeah. She would text him something like, I got HALEU today. And that was the secret signal that Gerhardt was nearby and she had to go dark.
I mean, taking a highly technical term from her professional world, a term literally describing volatile, energy-dense nuclear fuel, and repurposing it to hide an explosive secret in her personal life.
It's almost too on the nose.
It really is. But the cognitive planning required to maintain that level of deception is intense. It means she is constantly monitoring her environment.
Always looking over her shoulder.
Right. Constantly evaluating her husband's proximity and constantly maintaining a dual reality.
But wait, cognitive planning for what? Because if we look at the facts of the trial, Arielle testified under oath that she and Mr. Miller were not having physical sex.
Correct.
So if they really weren't physically intimate, why build a secret spy network for what she described on the stand as just flirty texts?
Right.
I mean, does an emotional affair really require a literal nuclear code word?
And that tension right there was the centerpiece of the trial analysis.
Yeah.
Because if it's just harmless flirting, why the CIA level cover-up?
Exactly.
And that brings us directly to Arielle's demeanor on the witness stand, which gave legal observers a lot to talk about. The commentary described her as a masterful and unflappable witness.
Masterful.
Yeah, she testified with laser precision. During intense cross-examination, the defense attorneys tried to box her in, but she just refused to be pinned down. She could see steps ahead of the lawyers.
Yeah, I saw the observers noted she would say things like, to the best of my knowledge, I believe that could be right.
Very calculated phrasing.
Which completely neutralized the defense's momentum. But, being composed on the stand doesn't make someone a villain.
No, of course it doesn't. But it does demonstrate a massive capacity for cognitive control.
Ah, okay.
It's the exact same skill set required to maintain a secret second life for months without breaking a sweat. Her ability to navigate that cross-examination mirrored her calculated behavior during the affair itself.
Interesting. So she was controlling the narrative in both places.
Precisely. By continually minimizing the deception, referring to the deleted WhatsApp threads and nuclear code words merely as flirty texts, she was attempting to control the narrative scale of the betrayal.
Honestly, hearing her parse words on the stand like a lawyer actually gives us the clearest window into what Gerhardt was dealing with at home.
Oh, absolutely.
Imagine facing that exact same evasiveness in your kitchen when you ask your spouse about a deleted text message. What happens when that carefully constructed bunker is breached and the partner just refuses to admit what's inside?
Well, that is where the timeline shifts from deception to actual psychological damage. Because when Gerhardt finally discovered the deleted WhatsApp messages, the devastation was profound.
It wasn't just a minor disagreement.
Not at all. They went to marriage counseling, and during those sessions, the relationship with Mr. Miller was explicitly referred to as emotional infidelity and a secret affair.
Yeah.
This was a foundational breach of their marriage.
And to really understand how that pressure built up to the breaking point, we have to look at an incident that happened in St. Louis.
Yes, the St. Louis trip.
Right. So this happened while the affair was ongoing, but the trial used it as a perfect microcosm of their dynamic. Arielle goes on a girls' trip to St. Louis with her best friend, Gianna.
Okay.
Gerhardt is scheduled to fly in and join them the very next day. But the night before he arrives, Arielle is out until midnight doing heavy liquor shots, specifically Irish car bombs, which the court noted she hadn't done in years.
She's acting out.
Yeah, she's escaping. And instead of texting her husband, who is flying in to see her, she is spending her entire night texting and sending photos of herself to Mr. Miller.
Which highlights exactly where her emotional energy was actively being directed.
Right. But the critical moment is what happens next. Gerhardt, who had actually discovered the reality of the affair by this point, arrives in St. Louis.
He's carrying this massive, devastating secret.
Exactly. And before he even confronts Arielle, he confides in their friends, Gianna and Bryant. He tells them what is going on.
Which is a pretty natural reaction when you're overwhelmed.
You would think so. But Arielle's reaction to this, which she admitted on the witness stand, is just staggering. She testified that she felt it was unfair and was genuinely upset that Gerhardt had told their friends about her affair.
Wow.
She completely displaced the blame. She framed the entire crisis around Gerhardt's handling of the situation rather than taking any ownership of the months of deception that actually caused it.
That is wild.
It's the psychological equivalent of setting someone's house on fire and when they start choking, looking them dead in the eye and saying, "What smoke?"
Yeah.
That's not just betrayal, that is gaslighting. And neurologically, that destroys a person's grip on reality.
It really does. Let's break down the mechanics of that because it's central to the legal outcome of this case.
Right.
When a partner denies reality like that, the brain's threat detection system goes into overdrive.
Right.
Gerhardt isn't just, mad about another man. His nervous system is constantly firing because the person he trusts most in the world is telling him his reality is invalid. We call this stewing.
Stewing.
Yes. Trial analysts pointed out that if objective observers sitting in a courtroom get frustrated just listening to her evasiveness on the stand, imagine what Gerhardt was experiencing living with it 24/7.
I mean, he's looking at the person he loves, the mother of his children, and she is effectively minimizing a massive breach of reality just to protect herself.
Exactly. This constant friction, this prolonged feeling of being emotionally undermined and gaslit, it creates a state of chronic hyperarousal
He's trapped in a fight-or-flight response.
for months. And that is exactly where the legal seeds for extreme mental or emotional disturbance are planted. It is a slow-motion psychological break.
And that slow-motion break finally hits a wall, exactly 3 months after the discovery of the affair, high above the Pacific Ocean on the Pali Puka Trail.
The breaking point.
Yeah, and we have two wildly conflicting accounts of what happened on March 24th, 2025.
We really do. The prosecution's narrative was one of cold calculation. They argued that Gerhardt was completely obsessed with the emotional affair and that the hike was a trap.
A trap!
Yes, they alleged he tried to shove her off the cliff, and when that failed, he pulled out a syringe.
Wait, a syringe?
A syringe, which Arielle testified she had to physically bat away. And according to the prosecution, he then bashed her head with a rock, causing that severe skull laceration we talked about.
And the quote she remembered him saying during the attack is chilling. He allegedly said, "Nobody's going to hear you out here. Nobody's coming to save you."
Terrifying.
But the testimony also showed Arielle wasn't passive. She fought back fiercely. She testified that she bit him and grabbed his testicles.
It's your survival mode.
But more than the physical fight, it was her psychological defense that stood out to me. In the middle of this life-or-death struggle, she invoked their children. She yelled, "You can't face our kids after this."
Oh, wow.
And according to her testimony, that specific sentence momentarily calmed him down. He actually took a breath before the attack continued.
Now, contrast that entirely with the defense's view, because Gerhardt took the stand and claimed that Arielle pushed him first.
Really?
Yes. He stated they were having a heated argument on the cliff edge, specifically about the coworker, Mr. Miller. He claimed Arielle pulled him to the ground and hit him in the face with a rock first.
Okay, so a complete reversal of who the aggressor was.
Right. His defense attorney, Thomas Otake, argued that Gerhardt hitting her back was a pure reflex fueled by raw emotion and self-defense.
The defense even brought in a pathologist who categorized Arielle's head wound as a soft tissue injury that wasn't life-threatening.
Which is a big claim.
It aggressively pushed back against the prosecution's narrative of attempted murder. But, regardless of who swung first, the aftermath is undeniable. Gerhardt flees the scene. He hides on the mountain for 8 hours while a massive search is underway.
8 hours alone on the mountain.
Yeah, and during that time, he FaceTimes his 20-year-old son, Emil.
And that phone call is arguably the most unfiltered window into his mental state we have.
Tell me about that.
According to Emil's devastating testimony, his father said Arielle had been cheating, and then he explicitly said he tried to kill her.
He admitted it on the call.
Yes, and Emil could actually see Arielle's blood on his father's shirt through the video call. Gerhardt also mentioned wanting to take his own life.
God.
It is the behavior of a man whose reality has completely shattered.
If you're listening to this and thinking, well, getting cheated on is awful, but I would never push someone off a cliff. The jury actually had to wrestle with that exact baseline.
They did.
You have these two brilliant, highly educated professionals reduced to absolute primal violence. And I keep coming back to the detail of the syringe. Because if you believe the prosecution that he brought a syringe on a hike, doesn't that completely blur the line between a spontaneous, emotion-fueled snap and cold, calculated premeditation?
It does, and that is the exact tightrope the jury was forced to walk. If you believe he packed a medical syringe with the explicit intent to incapacitate her, that points heavily toward attempted murder.
Because that's planning.
Exactly. It requires foresight, planning, and malice aforethought. But the defense heavily disputed the syringe narrative. They argued the physical evidence didn't actually support it.
Oh, interesting.
And if you remove the syringe and you are left with a brutal fight with a rock on a trail after an argument about an affair, well, you are looking at a man whose weight of deception, gaslighting, and chronic hyperarousal triggered a sudden violent explosion.
Right.
And that leans heavily toward manslaughter.
Hold on. What exactly is the legal threshold for extreme mental or emotional disturbance? Because as we said, being angry about infidelity isn't a legal defense for violence. Where does the law draw the line between rage and a legally recognized disturbance?
It's a vital distinction. In legal terms, extreme mental or emotional disturbance isn't just, I was really mad.
Okay.
It is a recognized state where a person's reasoning is temporarily, completely overwhelmed by an intense emotion. This is usually triggered by a profound psychological shock, or in this case, prolonged, intense distress.
So the stewing we talked about.
Yes, the stewing. The law recognizes that in this specific state, the person becomes temporarily incapable of acting with the cold calculation required for murder. They're acting entirely on overwhelmed instinct.
So after 8 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict that perfectly encapsulated this complex psychological web. They found Gerhardt Konig not guilty of attempted murder.
Wow.
Instead, they found him guilty of attempted manslaughter based upon extreme mental or emotional disturbance.
The jury foreperson, Michael Apua Atkins, gave some incredible insight into the room's logic after the fact.
What did she say?
She said that ultimately, the jury just didn't feel the evidence upheld the fact that he explicitly intended on murdering her. They didn't buy the calculated, premeditated narrative.
And when the verdict was read, Gerhardt just bowed his head, closed his eyes, and cried. He now faces up to 20 years in prison at his August sentencing, and his defense team has already stated they plan to appeal.
It's a tragedy all around.
But there is a deep, dark irony to this entire trial. By all accounts, Arielle was an incredibly polished, strategic witness. She didn't stumble. She parsed her words beautifully.
Masterful, like the observer said.
Right. Yet by returning this specific verdict of extreme emotional disturbance, the jury legally validated the profound psychological damage that her deception caused.
That's a really good point.
It's as if the jury believed everything she said about the sheer terror of the physical attack on the cliff. But they also recognized the invisible psychological wounds she inflicted on him for months beforehand. They recognized the gas in the room.
Exactly. The verdict acknowledges that prolonged deception, the daily drip, drip, drip of an emotional affair, and the minimization of a partner's reality aren't just bad relationship habits.
They have real consequences.
Huge consequences. The legal system, through this specific charge, formally recognizes that the human mind has a breaking point. In the eyes of this jury, those actions were the catalyst that genuinely pushed a sane, successful person into a state of temporary violent madness.
So let's tie these threads together. We started with a picture-perfect hike that turned into a bloodbath, and what we found underneath the surface was a psychological pressure cooker.
A deadly one.
We explored how an emotional affair hidden behind encrypted WhatsApp messages, deleted threads, and a literal nuclear code word created a reservoir of resentment and cognitive dissonance that ultimately exploded on a Hawaiian cliffside, completely destroying a family.
And why does this trial matter to you, listening right now? Because it is a stark, extreme reminder of the immense power of transparency and the devastating danger of deceit in our closest relationships.
It really is.
The legal system isn't just concerned with the physical mechanics of a crime. It is deeply invested in the why. It recognizes that emotional betrayal and the denial of a partner's reality carry a tangible, sometimes deadly weight.
We often think of modern technology as this incredible tool that connects us, but in this case, a simple chat app and a clever acronym created a secret alternate universe that ultimately ended two highly successful careers, fractured a family, and nearly cost a woman her life.
It's sobering.
It begs the question. In an era where keeping secrets is as easy as swiping to delete an app or tapping a screen, are we vastly underestimating the true psychological danger of the invisible betrayals we carry in our pockets every day?
Something to think about.
Next time you look at a smiling couple at the top of a scenic trail, you might just wonder what kind of bunker they left back at home.